Welcome back, folks. Want to welcome back our special guest, Randy Mueller of The Athletic, and, a few franchises around the league you may have seen him at. So, Randy, thanks for taking the time. And now that we're past the draft, checking back in with us to see what's going on around the league.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back on. I think a lot of people think this is a downtime for the NFL, but as you know, most teams have finished rookie camps now, still kind of waiting on that one mandatory vet camp that's coming up, and still some tweaking going on roster-wise in most NFL cities for sure.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed a few days of downtime, but I know the teams are right back in it. And for Kansas City in particular, it's trying to flesh out who's going to go where. Do you have what you're looking for? Eventful draft for them. And I do feel like overall they came away with what they had to have with a couple of nice caveats on top of it. When you look at what you have to do to try to put a third championship season back to back to back, you had to have a couple of building blocks in the wide receiver position, the left tackle position, or at least competition there. Overall, the way that it fell out, do you feel the Chiefs did a good job in addressing their needs plus finding some gems?
Well, I think they have. They're in rarefied air, as we know. You win back-to-back championships. Not many can speak on that topic, to be honest with you. I surely can't, but I can only imagine what Brett Veach and Andy Reid are going through. It's hard when you pick down at the bottom of every round to still fill needs, but yet feel like you're getting the best players for the quality you can. We think we know what they might want to do. Ideally, these draft picks come through when you can actually fill a need with the best player available. So that's a tough spot. They may have found that they had a top player on their board that was listed in their top 15, but just couldn't draft him for whatever reason at 32 or wherever they pick throughout. So it's a fine line in how you choose to build your team through the draft when you're picking at the bottom of every round.
It does make it, I just think, extremely more difficult, but it also illustrates, I think, the diversity of what your board might be versus somebody else's board. And that facilitates moving around, right? I wasn't surprised that they moved. I was surprised at how little they moved in terms of the two moves up to 28 with the Bills and then up one spot in the second round. That generally doesn't feel like it's much of a payoff, but knowing that your board might have a couple of things in common with someone else's, it certainly feels like the necessity was what Brett Veach was comfortable with. What did you think of those two moves in particular, just moving around a few spots?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think more strategy played a part in those than actually moving up to grab a particular player. I think you're right. When you move one or two spots, sometimes it's as simple as, hey, you didn't want anybody else to have that spot. And there's a price that comes with that. And sometimes there's gamesmanship involved, but definitely some strategy involved. I thought this year in the draft, probably more so than the last 6 or 8 that I can remember, the quality of player wasn't necessarily evident beyond, say, the 20th pick or the 4th round. I felt like whether it's COVID or for whatever reason, the majority of the depth in this draft just didn't exist, both at the top and throughout the tail end of the last 3 or 4 rounds. So I felt all along as a league, there were less deals made this year because of that. And I think people that were drafting players in the 3rd round may have been on other people's boards in the 4th and 5th round. So it was a grab bag a lot sooner in the draft than I think in normal years.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that works out in the end and what that means for next year. We're going to talk about that over on the other portion. But for today, when we do realize that getting the top 2 needs out of the way and making those small trade-ups, you end up with Xavier Worthy, a unique prospect in one thing in particular, and maybe not as athletic a player that they've had in Kansas City since Tyreek Hill was traded. I still think putting a lot of pressure on a rookie like that really sets you up to be too dependent. They just came off a season where they had a rookie that had to step into the role as the season went on, and he was able to do that. Now we know there's some off-field concerns there. What does it do to set up Patrick Mahomes run this next season in having, yes, athleticism, but inexperienced athleticism there? Is it still something that makes him more dangerous, or is this, at this point in the season, kind of a trade-off where we're still looking at an unknown at the wide receiver group?
Well, I think in general, most years you have a little bit of an unknown when it comes to drafting receivers. But I do think in this case, in Xavier Worthy, they get, inexperienced or not, a fast guy that takes the top off defenses, that changes the way people can defend you. And that's what they got. And I think that's a fact. I don't think there's any gray area around that. So that skill set, that particular skill set, helps them do what they want to do offensively. So yeah, you would like to have a guy with maybe a little more production, more experience running a fuller route tree, all kinds of things. But I know they got a fast guy. And in this offense, that element I have felt like has been missing. So it's something that I think can add to the mix, even if Worthy doesn't figure it all out in the first 8 weeks of the season. They're still going to have a purpose for playing him. And I think it'll be beneficial and seen by all of us on the outside when we watch their offense spread the field.
That makes a lot of sense. And especially if they are correct and they're putting together a roster that can push not only into the playoffs, but through them. We're talking a 20-game season, right? So if it doesn't click until week 10 or the bye week or anything, as we're about to find out the schedule release, that's enough time, right? Within this offense, in this setup, when you have Travis Kelce on the offense and you have a running game that you feel that is probably more able to be leaned on than it has been in the last several years, and a little bit more balance, and then obviously you have the Mahomes factor, does that all set you up to be Brett Veach in a position where they can zero in on an aspect? Like you said, he is a speed guy, the missing element. I think that's a rotation that can come around positionally based on what your floor is, because you've built up the roster to the point where, yes, you might have a gap here or there, but you don't have gaping holes where you have to fill in depth. It is just the last guy on top. At least that's what it seems to me. Do you see it that way, or is it deeper than that?
Well, I think they have a really good team, and it's easier to pick a cherry on top once you have a really good team. So that if that's what needs to be said, I totally agree. I do think this, and this gets unnoticed in my opinion a lot when you draft one of these fast receivers. Fast guys help your running game too. And regardless of if they throw one ball to him deep, people have to honor his speed and know that he could go by them. So guess what happens? They're going to play two high safeties a lot. They're not going to drop a safety down in the box to help with the running game. Isaiah Pacheco kind of became their bread and butter last year. I don't see any reason that can't happen. And again, Xavier Worthy can help the running game just by having that threat of being able to run by people. I just think you eliminate 8-man boxes, you eliminate any cheating up to stop the run, and you have to play them honestly. And if they can find a way to keep Xavier Worthy kind of on the move and keep him from getting jammed in press coverage stuff, they'll end up developing him a lot quicker. But even while that development is going on, I think he serves a purpose in helping their running game, because they're going to play in some light boxes and he'll be Pacheco's new best friend, even though they might not even know each other.
I think that goes hand in hand too, that some of the tenets of the offense that they do want to run is that motion pre, and then forward is a significant portion of what they're trying to do deep. Pairing Xavier Worthy with Hollywood Brown, where you have two significant deep threats, does that maybe open it up that much more that Patrick's going to have to hand the ball off more because of what the defense is going to be forced into?
Well, I think it would make sense to hand the ball off more, to be honest with you, because both those guys do serve a purpose. And I guess the one thing I would worry about with those two fast guys are people getting their hands on them, because both are a little light, both are a little uneducated and inexperienced beating press. I think especially in the case of Hollywood, that has not been his strength over his short career so far. Beating press at the line of scrimmage, and he's been getting hung up a lot, and that's part of the dilemma as to what you do with him. So that's what I mean when I say you got to kind of keep him on the move so you can't get press coverage against him. I don't think they're going to get away from the formula that worked last year. Now, they've got to find a way to not only run by people, they got to find a way to catch the ball as well. And that would be the one element still for me that, especially with Rashee Rice's issues, they're going to have to find someone that can do the dirty work, that can be an option other than Kelce as an underneath zone defender, a zone receiver, to get away from some of that zone type coverage. And that would be the one element. And I'll bet if we gave Brett Veach some truth serum, that might be one element he's still looking for, is a little bit of a size option inside, that when Travis Kelce wears down late in the year, they still have that type of receiver to go with, that they can throw it to him even when he's covered. So that would be the one element still for me that I would be searching for a little bit.